Part 1.
You will hear a man phoning to complain about a flight. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 3. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 3.
Hello, you have reached the complaints department. How can I help you?
Yes, hello there. I am phoning to make a complaint regarding a flight that I took with you recently.
Okay. There are some details I will need to take from you first. May I have your name, please?
Jack Dawson. That's D-A-W-S-O-N.
And your address?
It's 33 Hillcrest Road. That's Hillcrest.
33 Hillcrest Road. Is that in Exeter?
Yes.
And what is the postcode of the residence?
It's AL698GQ.
Thank you. Do you have a telephone number?
Yes, the number at my office is 754688.
That's good. And may I just take a home phone number for you in case of emergencies?
No problem. It's 798662.
Are they both local numbers?
Yes.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 4 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 4 to 10.
Okay, great. Thank you for your patience. Now, what is the nature of your complaint?
I'm phoning to complain about a flight I took recently. I always take certain measures to ensure that I will be comfortable. For example, I always pay the additional cost for extra legroom, and I always arrive punctually for the flight to make sure that I'm seated beneath an air conditioner. Unfortunately, I was disappointed to find that the air conditioning on the plane was broken, so I spent the entire flight in discomfort as it was too hot and the air was stuffy.
I see. I do apologize for this fault with the air conditioning. Now, while I have you on the phone, would you mind answering a short questionnaire regarding your recent flight?
Sure.
Okay, let's get started. What did you think of the food that was served to you during the flight?
I thought that it was inexpensive and quite delicious. However, I was still very hungry afterwards, as it was a very small portion and more of a snack. Providing a snack for lunch is not reasonable.
Okay, I have noted that down. What was your opinion of the quality of service that you received from our staff on board?
The staff was very helpful, but each time I pressed the button to request service, it took a long time for a staff member to arrive. I found this frustrating, as there just weren't enough staff on board the flight to be able to serve all the customers.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for answering those questions. Are there any other parts of your travel experience that you would like to comment on?
Yep. The process of moving through security was very quick and helped to make my travel experience stress-free.
Okay. Do you have any extra comments on the services you received during the flight?
Yes, I thought that the seats were very uncomfortable and looked very old. They were also in need of repair, as the reclined feature on my chair was broken, so I could not go to sleep for the whole flight. Luckily, the entertainment facilities were very good, so I was able to distract myself by watching movies.
Thank you so much for taking the time to answer all of my questions. We would like to offer you some gifts as a goodwill gesture, with a 20% discount on the cost of your hotel stay. We also appreciate that international calls to your home country can be expensive, and we are sure that you would like to keep your family updated on your travels. So please accept a phone card which has a credit of £20.
Oh, that's really great. Thank you so much for the gifts.
No problem. We look forward to having you travel with us again soon. Have a fantastic vacation.
Thanks. Bye.
That is the end of part 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 2. Part 2.
You will hear part of a talk about an Australian wild zoo given by a tour guide. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Australian Wild Zoo. I would like to start by introducing you to the new features that we have added to our zoo in the recent renovation. Being the only zoo in the area, we receive thousands of visitors a year. We found that this huge footfall was too demanding for the facilities that we were able to provide, and so we decided to expand ourselves in order to give every visitor a brilliant and exciting experience. We initially intended to build a new dog walking area. However, we felt that the zoo should cater only to exotic animals. During our previous renovation, we expanded the exhibition centre, and so we felt that this time the zoo would benefit most from introducing a new batch of animals, so visitors can now see a whole range of new additions at the Australian Wild Zoo, including lions and bears. With this huge improvement to our facilities, we also found it necessary to change our regulations, which we put into action in June. We now allow visitors access to the zoo during weekdays, and as some of our newly added animals are nocturnal, guests may also now visit the animals late at night. Unfortunately, some visitors had started feeding the animals during these late-night viewing times, which disrupted their feeding pattern, and as a result, we had to ban food in the viewing areas. One of our most exciting additions to the zoo is our native kangaroo, who we have named Frisbee. For a fee of just $5, visitors can have their photo taken with him and have it printed onto a selection of items such as keyrings and mugs. At first, visitors were also allowed to feed Frisbee items that we provided, such as carrots and leaves. However, some guests started feeding him hamburgers and chips, so we were forced to forbid visitors from feeding him. As kangaroos are such calm animals, Frisbee isn't disturbed by the noises and shouting of visitors at the zoo, which has helped him to settle in at his new home very quickly. The Pie Dog Zone has been permanently closed throughout the winter period to allow the dogs to hibernate as they would in their natural habitat. We were very excited to be reopening the zone. However, unfortunately, we have been forced to close it temporarily as the result of a broken fence, which will take about 1 week to fix. We were intending to renovate the zone with the other construction that we were undertaking, but unfortunately we did not have sufficient funds. We understand that this temporary closure may disappoint our visitors, and so we have decided to offer a discounted price on our tickets for the next week. If you ask at the reception desk, they will happily direct you to the photo shop where you can purchase the ticket. The ticket will also entitle you to a 10% discount off any item in our gift shop, where we sell a range of items including postcards and fluffy toys.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Now, we're currently standing at the gate, which is marked with the arrow on the map. Now, if any of you need to visit the toilets before we get started, they're right here to our left. Out to the east, just across the grass, there is the bird hide, where we have over 100 species of birds for you to watch. We even have an interactive zone where you can feed them with seed and take photographs with our parrots. What a great souvenir to remember your trip! And up the path to the north, if you look in front of you now, there is the pie dog zone. Although it is closed, if any of the dogs are playing outside, you will be able to see them through the fence. And then let's pass by the refuge. This area is a sheltered part for Brolga watchers, who can use it to spy through binoculars. And after that, I suggest that you all visit the rest area for some cold drinks and snacks, as it is very hot outside. It is just at the northwest corner of the zoo. After that, you could cut across the path to the large rectangular hut, where you will be able to see our new edition of fierce lions. The mother has just had cubs, so it is really quite a rare thing to see. And around to the west, for those of you who want to visit Frisbee, our native kangaroo, he is in the circular-shaped hut just up the path to the left. Don't forget to have your photo taken with him. Now, as I mentioned before, you can purchase your discounted tickets at the photo shop, and this is also where you will come to collect any photos you have had taken at the zoo during your visit. The photo shop is located at the southwest corner of the zoo. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your visit.
That is the end of part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 3. Part 3.
You will hear a student called Margaret Parkinson talking about the class she missed on Thursday with her professor. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hi, Professor Timmons. Do you have a few minutes? I was hoping to talk about what I missed on Thursday.
Hello, come in. Sure, sit down. Could you tell me your name, please?
Margaret, sir. Margaret Parkinson. I apologise for missing your class, but I had to go to the hospital.
I'm sorry to hear that. Everything is okay now, though, I hope?
Yes, thanks.
Glad to hear it. So on Thursday, I outlined the research project that will account for 30% of your grade. All students will be divided into groups and will give a well-researched presentation to the class covering a specific topic relevant to student life.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Can we choose just any topic that pertains to life as a student, like how to start your own student organisation?
Well, though I'm sure that would be an informative presentation, I've already chosen a list of topics which I will assign. As an example, I assigned one group the topic of student loans. They're to research not just the prevalence of students who have loans to pay for their tuition, but information as to how best to manage these loans and possible scholarships that could alleviate some of the financial burden.
That one sounds particularly interesting to me. Could I request that topic? I could easily find out a lot about it by stopping by the finance office on my way to class.
Unfortunately, that one's already taken by another group. I have, however, assigned you to a group and given you all one of two choices.
Oh, I see. What are the choices?
The first is discussing smoking, trends in the number of student smokers compared with the general population, popular reasons students take up smoking, and more healthy alternatives to smoking.
That one could be interesting. I'm not a smoker myself, but we'll see what my group thinks. If we did choose this topic, we would rather not put our fellow students on the spot to interview them. Where else could we gather information?
How about where the cigarettes are sold?
Oh, that's a great idea. I could interview the manager of a supermarket and find out the average age of people buying cigarettes, or how much they buy, that sort of thing.
Precisely.
OK, I'll keep that in mind. And what was the other topic?
The other topic is the practice of natural medicine. It sounds far more specific than the others, but it is more of an exercise of outlining a career path. If your group chooses this, you would cover the specifics of becoming a doctor of natural medicine, how to become licensed to practice natural medicine, what the career outlook is, etc. You could find much of the information you need on this in the careers office.
Wow, that would be really helpful, not just in learning about natural medicine, but in how to approach researching any career path.
That's the idea. I want groups to really think outside the box to find information on their topics. They should interview multiple sources.
OK, now I think I have the general idea.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 27 to 30.
When is the presentation due?
I expect each group to send me an email attachment of the plan ahead of time by October 10th, so that I can ensure that you are on the right track.
Oh, that's actually really reassuring. I would hate to spend so much time on a presentation only to find we had taken it in the wrong direction. So when is the presentation?
I let groups choose from the list of time slots I have between November 1st and November 5th.
OK, how about the 3rd? I'll have to check with my group, of course, but maybe we could write a tentative time?
Sure, let me take a look. I'm actually booked completely through the 3rd and 4th now. How about sometime in the afternoon of the 5th?
Great. How about 2 o'clock?
No problem. I'll pencil your group in.
OK, thanks. And to clarify, what exactly is due in the first phase?
Before the October deadline, I want your group to have compiled resources and then to provide some initial data analysis to support your claims.
OK, so data analysis is due the 10th of October, and then the
Presentation? Yes. The final phase is simply giving the presentation on the 5th of November.
All right, I think I have all the information I need. Thanks.
You're welcome. See you in class tomorrow.
That is the end of part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 4. Part 4.
You will hear an extract from a lecture about solar eclipses in history. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 36. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 36.
Good evening and welcome to this month's Observatory Club lecture. I'm Donald Mackey and I'm here to talk to you about the solar eclipse in history. 1,000 years ago, a total eclipse of the sun was a terrifying religious experience. But these days an eclipse is more likely to be viewed as a tourist attraction than as a scientific or spiritual event. People will literally travel miles to be in the right place at the right time, to get the best view of their eclipse. Well, what exactly causes a solar eclipse? When the world goes dark for a few minutes in the middle of the day. Scientifically speaking, the dark spot itself is easy to explain. It is the shadow of the moon streaking across a different and, to all intents and purposes, a seemingly random part of the globe. In the past, people often interpreted an eclipse as a danger signal heralding disaster, and in fact, the Chinese were so disturbed by these events that they included among their gods whose job was to prevent eclipses. But whether or not you are superstitious or take a purely scientific view, our earthly eclipses are special in 3 different ways. Firstly, there can be no doubt that they are very beautiful. It's as if a deep blue curtain has fallen over the daytime sky as the sun becomes a black void surrounded by the glow of its outer atmosphere. But beyond this, total eclipses possess a second, more compelling beauty in the eyes of us scientists, for they offer a unique opportunity for research. Only during an eclipse can we study the corona and other dim things that are normally lost in the sun's glare. And thirdly, they are rare. Even though an eclipse of the sun occurs somewhere on Earth, if you sit in your garden and wait, it will take 375 years on average for one to come to you. If the moon were any larger, eclipses would become a monthly bore. If it were smaller, they simply would not be possible. The ancient Babylonian priests, who spent a fair bit of time staring at the sky, had already noted that there was an 18-year pattern in their recurrence, but they didn't have the mathematics to predict an eclipse accurately. It was Edmund Halley, the English astronomer, who knew his maths well enough to predict the return of the comet, which incidentally bears his name.
Before you hear the rest of the lecture, you have some time to look at questions 37 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 37 to 40.
In 1735, Edmund Halley became the first person to make an accurate prediction of an eclipse. This brought eclipses firmly into the scientific domain, and they have allowed a number of important scientific discoveries to be made. For instance, in the eclipse of 1868, two scientists, Janssen and Lockyer, were observing the Sun's atmosphere, and it was these observations that ultimately led to the discovery of a new element. They named the element helium after the Greek god of the Sun. This was a major find, because helium turned out to be the most common element in the universe after hydrogen. Another great triumph involved Mercury. I'll just put that up on the board for you now. See, there's Mercury, the planet closest to the Sun, then Venus, Earth, etc. For centuries, scientists had been unable to understand why Mercury appeared to rotate faster than it should. Some astronomers suggested that there might be an undiscovered planet causing this unusual orbit, and even gave it the name Vulcan. During the eclipse of 1878, an American astronomer, James Watson, thought he had spotted this so-called lost planet. But alas for him, he was later obliged to admit that he had been wrong about Vulcan and withdrew his claim. Then Albert Einstein came on the scene. Einstein suggested that rather than being wrong about the number of planets, astronomers were actually wrong about gravity. Einstein's theory of relativity, for which he is so famous, disagreed with Newton's law of gravity in just the right way to explain Mercury's odd orbit. He also realized that a definitive test would be possible during the total eclipse of 1919, and this is indeed when the theory was finally proved correct. So there you have several examples of how eclipses have helped to increase our understanding of the universe. And now let's move on to the social.
That is the end of part 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers.